what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Geeks from the Multiverse. I'm Matt. With me is John.
What up, y'all?
So today we're going to be talking our Marvel Phase episode multi-episode series. So John, why don't you talk to him about what we're specifically doing in this episode?
So, Matt, the first thing we're going to be doing, actually, we're going to be going over a game called Superfight. Matt will explain the game in a very little bit. But to get the Marvel series started, we're going to talk about Phase 1. We're going to be talking about, maybe certain key events that are in there, kind of give you an overview because, some of you veteran Marvel nerds, right, or geeks or whatever you want to be called, right? You're going to already know a lot about this, so this might sound redundant, but hopefully it might be a little bit funny for you, right? But for people that don't have any idea of what the MCU is and just, have a general overview of it, like that's what we want to try to get at. We're trying to make sure that you guys understand our passion because we're big, Marvel geeks. I mean, both Matt and I have seen a lot of movies together. We always talk about Marvel and it's always one of our biggest passions. So we want to give you guys that opportunity to kind of dive into what we always talk about. So for people that do know us, trust me, you'll know that we talk about Marvel all the time. But without further ado, Matt.
Yeah, so we're going to be playing a game called Superfight, and this game is basically kind of ridiculous, and it's a game where it involves cards, and you basically pick a character, and you pick either powers or weaknesses, and then you proceed to argue about which of your fighters would win that fight. That's basically Superfight. So you could have, a baby who shoots lasers but is blind versus some other random character with random powers, and you and your friends have to basically argue who would win that fight.
So I will say this, Matt, the one example you gave about the kindergarten group that had the fire breathing. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so the example we have is kindergartner class. Got it. Thank you. Appreciate it. I just want to make sure I hear okay. So we got a kindergarten class with breeze fire wearing a jetpack, right? Versus a pirate swinging a shark on a chain on a Segway. Okay. Now, both Matt and I agree that the kindergartners are going to clearly win this fight because I don't think pirates are going to have any chance of flying kindergartners. And trust me, it's pretty clear as day, like that's going to win. But the whole point of the game, like Matt was saying, is to basically debate and see which one of us actually has the better choice. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to randomize this. So we have no idea what we're going to be picking. We have no idea what powers. We don't have any idea.
Right.
So I'm going to go first. I'm going to pick 3 random.
And whoever wins each week will basically be the Geek of the Week.
So we wanted to talk about that too, because we're going to be the final prize. The final prize, my bad, is going to be the king of the week, but the geek of the multiverse. Like the you're the champion, like you're the guy, like you're going to be the geekiest of them all. So I'm going to try this again because I screwed up. So I'm going to pick a random card, Matt, because that's not going to be what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to put this back. All right, let's see.
All right, so John's got 1. Now he's got 2. All right, 1 more.
Let's see. We're going to go right here. Hopefully I'm not seeing what I picked.
All right, so I'm going to pick my 3. And these are completely random. We're putting them face down so we can't see them either. Once I get my 3, then we will pick one and we will turn it over. And that will be basically our fighter that we will be fighting with. So John, why don't you pick your card? Which one are you picking? 1, 2, or 3?
I'm going to go right in the middle. I'm going to pick my second one.
All right, flip that bad boy over and let's see what you got.
Oof. Mine is psychic. So that's what I have for.
So you're going to be fighting with a psychic.
Yep.
I'm going to go with my 3rd card here. I'm going to discard those 2.
Okay. What did you get? I want to know, please.
Oh, boy.
What is it?
I got a disembodied head.
Oh, there you go. That's lovely. That's going to be so much fun with a psychic.
Yeah. All right.
So let's.
I don't know so far, folks.
I mean, now we're gonna pick our random 3 black cards. So let's see. I got my first card, got my second, and I'm gonna go right here.
All right,
got
let
my
me
third.
pick mine. So I got 1. I got a second, and getting my third. Oh,
He's got 4.
I got 4. Putting that one back.
All right.
All right. So I got 3. You got 3. Pick one.
Go with my number 1. Here we go. And
Here
what
we
do
go.
we get? And mine is afraid of water.
Ooh, that's a weakness. So you have a psychic who's afraid of water.
So hopefully we'll see about your head. So
all right. I'm going to go with number 2 here. I'm going to put that over there. Let's discard these ones.
all right, here we go.
I hope for something good here.
Uh-oh. I think it's a weakness too. Let's see.
Oh, boy.
What is it, Matt?
I got vertigo.
Man, that really
This
fits
is-
you. That really fits the
This
card.
is not going well for either of us right now.
I mean, I'm just going to say this because if you look at what we're looking at, I mean, we're going to describe it, of course, but a psychic that's afraid of water and a disembodied head that has vertigo. I'm just going to say this, Matt. Right now, it kind of looks like the psychic is in the lead on this one.
Well, we got one more round of black cards. So
All right, well then let's do this one more time. All right, so we got my first card. We'll go with my second. Oh, god damn it! I don't know what it is. I'm just gonna keep shuffling. I don't know what it is. There we go. And then, all right, my last card. Here we go. So,
all right, got my first one. Got the second and picking the third. All right.
here we go.
John, 1, 2, or 3.
So I picked 2-1 last time. I'm gonna go with the third one. Okay, so let's get rid of the other cards here.
Hopefully it's instant death.
I swear, I really hope it's not anything of weakness. So here we go. Ooh, knows kung fu.
Oh, great. My head's going to be like a football.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be great. I love it. Here we
All
go.
right. So doing like a what? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo kind of thing? Because I
kind of do the same thing I did. Just take a chance. He's going with the first card.
I'm going with the first card.
Here he goes.
I'm going to discard these over here.
All right, let's see what we got. That's a disappointing look. So I'm quite curious now, man. What is it? Because now you got to tell the people.
My entire body is very sticky. But here's the funny thing. I'm a disembodied head, so I don't have a body. So
it kind of defeats the.
it kind of negates that
So
whole
I mean,
card.
if you look at it, though, I mean, does it also mean the head too, or is it strictly the body?
I mean, I guess it could go to the head.
It depends on which way you look at it, because I mean, if you have a sticky head, I mean, somebody that knows kung fu, I mean, if it gets stuck to my foot, I mean, I could pretty much bash your head in with it wherever. I mean, that's the only thing I have over that. But so, all right, Matt. So now that we have our 3 cards, now we have to debate and explain why we think ours is going to win. So, Matt, and you know what? I'm going to let you go first because I think you have a very interesting choice.
So I'm going to debate this, even though I do have a feeling that my disembodied head would probably lose against your psychic. But I do have a feeling that if my disembodied head was still alive,
Okay.
that my disembodied head would be undead. So just knowing kung fu would not be enough to necessarily get rid of me.
But here's the catch to this. So let's say, I know because we didn't choose a location. That's like another part of the game. Let's say you were in a body of water. How exactly are you planning on trying to get out of a body of water if you're still undead? I mean, are you going to like somehow roll in the water and like, pray to God that you can finally show up on land? Or
But if I was undead, that wouldn't matter because I wouldn't need to breathe.
true.
And 2, you're afraid of water, so you wouldn't go near me anyways.
No, I'd just kick you and I'd say, see you later. And then hopefully maybe I'll see you again at some point and I'll just keep doing that for so long. Or flip side, let's say we were near a volcano. If I just threw your head in a body of volcano and you're burning to alive, well, again, you're undead. I don't know if you're going to regenerate your head, especially if it was in.
See, my problem is I have no offense and I have no defense.
You don't have any.
I'm literally just ahead. I mean, I can bite.
Yeah, you could bite, but I mean, you also have vertigo, so you're going to be like, in and
everything
out.
is spinning, and so it's obviously going to be very tough for me if like I'm just ahead. I do have like the fact that I'm very sticky, so I can stick to surfaces. Like if you kick me, I'm just going to stick up to a wall and you can't reach me. So I might have a chance there.
I mean, but the thing is though, if you're stuck there, then you're not going to go anywhere. So for example, if I had a psychic ability, right, then theoretically I could, I guess use my mental abilities to try to like get you down or find a way to get you down and then, do something else with you. So you can stick to whatever service you want. But if let's say you're on a train track, right? And you're stuck on the train track. And let's say a train's coming by in like, 5 minutes and you can't go anywhere and you're going to stay right there. You're telling me that you're going to somehow survive that.
I don't think I can because one, I don't think I'd be able to move because I'm only a disembodied head. I would need a neck to move.
Right. You would need a way to like be able to roll and to do,
right. Without like neck muscles, I can't move. And I know that's kind of getting a little nerdy into this, but like I literally have no offense or defense. Like if at least I got a card that said like laser eyes, then at least I could have defended myself.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at least you could be like, hey, gotcha. But
I mean, all you need to do is walk up to me and crush my head and I'm dead. Right. Even if I'm undead.
Yeah. Right. I mean, at that point you're, I mean, I'm sorry, Matt, but I don't think you won this debate.
No. And having a disembodied head that has vertigo and being sticky, unfortunately gives me two weaknesses that won't help me in this fight.
No. So I will say that this week, first week, I will take King Geek of the Week.
You can take it.
Oh, okay. Did you not want to do the applause or anything?
Do you want the applause, John?
Yes, I actually, you know what? I would like that, please. Oh, thank you guys. I support. Thank you. It means so much to me.
All right. So, John, you are Geek of the Week. We will play another round on our next episode. And hopefully I get better cards and a better draw next time.
And I hope it's going to be more interesting because I really, really want to get those random like scenarios because if we only get that, like clearly I know that, no offense, a head's not going to do anything. And me knowing Kung Fu and having a psychic ability, yeah, I'm afraid of water. That's my only, weakness, but it's not going to really make a difference.
And this game can get really interesting. I've played with friends before and it can get really interesting. I had a character, I don't remember who the character was, but his power basically was everything he touches turns to hummus. And as funny as it sounds, when you really think about it, you can't hit him.
Nope.
You can't touch him. And if he touches you or you touch him, you turn into hummus. Hummus can't do nothing.
Nope.
So
gonna be, yeah.
You're basically done.
At that point, yes. Like I would say that the person that had the hummus card is going to win that battle because at that point, like you said, you're going to try to hit him. You're going to try to do all this stuff. And like you try to punch him, your hand's going to turn into hummus. And you're like, well, I can't, I guess I'm only, have one hand now and I can't really do anything with it. So, if like maybe the only counter argument would be like, if you had like fire breath or like lasers or something that's going to like melt something, that might take the advantage over, let's say, hummus, because you could do that. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, hummus is going to, even though it sounds stupid, it's honestly probably going to be.
It sounds really stupid, but yeah, it's like you turn everything to hummus. All I got to do is touch you, and then you turn into a big pile of hummus.
Right, but again, That's why I said I figured,
But I had a disembodied head that had vertigo and was sticky.
I mean, having only played this game the first time, I can definitely tell, the more random cards you get, the more interesting scenarios and having our debates. So hopefully in the next few weeks, especially when we're talking about Marvel and then jumping into this game before we do that, we'll hopefully make it more interesting and have you guys kind of like, have more laughs out of this. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and we already know the clear winner, so it's okay.
All right, Mr. Geek of the Week.
All right, then.
All right, so phase one. Most people have, know what Marvel is from the movies that are coming out now. We know the history, most of us, I think, know the history of it. But I think there might be a lot of people out there that might not have seen a lot of the movies from phase one.
Because a lot of them usually kind of jump ahead. It's like if you go like say the second or third phase, and then they'll watch the more current ones. So because if you're a true Marvel fan, you'll go back and watch the very first Iron Man, Captain America, all these other ones that are part of phase one. And I agree. If you're new to this, I would suggest if you want to learn more about it, go back and watch the first Iron Man, the second Iron Man, Captain America. Honestly, we're going to talk about one that both Matt and I agree. It makes no sense to watch it because it really doesn't give you a good story on that particular character. But go ahead, Matt. I'll let you say your thing.
So, in researching, phase one and trying to come up with a summary, John and I came up with obviously two different approaches to this because I wanted to come up with a summary that if you never saw any of these movies, no, if I said, "Hey, do you watch Marvel?" and you go, "What's Marvel?" you would get the synopsises from these movies based on the summary that I have. Now, the summary that John's going to give, if you're familiar with the MCU, you will understand exactly, the events that happened in phase one. You'll know the characters and all of that. So I'm gonna give you my summary, and these go, per character, not necessarily per movie, but it is per character.
So then what I'm going to try to do then, Matt, is every time you talk about that particular movie, I'll just kind of give, if there's not enough key events, some of the more important things to remember, then I will, kind of interject and say what, for Marvel fans in general, like you should know, like these are the key events for that particular character within the movies.
Just have the understanding that this is my interpretation is a layman's interpretation. And if you are familiar with the MCU, it's probably going to be really lame, but on the funnier side. So I'm going to start with Iron Man, which is Tony Stark. So we start with a billionaire arms dealer named Tony Stark. He has a life-changing experience in the desert, builds himself a hero suit. He fights a number of other tech industry figures, meets Natasha, aka Black Widow, and her shield boss, Nick Fury.
So with Iron Man itself, right? So when he's out in the desert, he has to basically make a suit because unfortunately he got shot by a rocket, if I'm not mistaken. And he actually builds what's called the arc reactor. And so he puts it inside of his chest, like basically it's his own life support, right? And, in the desert, he's got to be quick. And I know he actually meets, I think it was a scientist that actually helps him out to build this suit at the time. And so they do that. And then, of course, the first Iron Man suit, my God, like it was wonky. It was everything he got. But like for what he had, it was honestly pretty impressive on how he made that suit. I mean, it was basically all metal. There was no like the Tony Stark that you see nowadays with like the nanotech and everything else. But this original suit became the foundation to what he was eventually going to create in like Iron Man 2, 3, and all the other Avenger movies that came out. And the biggest thing is his actual, I want to say is his business partner that, or not his business partner, he was actually his mentor. He becomes the main villain in the movie, and it becomes clear that he's been using him for years. He's been using him for years, and he doesn't want anything to really do with Stark Industries. And so when Tony finds out about this, now he has to face him and do everything that he can to save his company and show that the world needs some sort of superhero. And so I'm not going to go into like more details than that. Of course, if you wanted to watch it, you're more than welcome to. But at the end of the movie, when Matt was talking about meeting like Nick Fury and all that, and as well as Natasha, he meets Nick Fury at the very end, and that's where we get like some of the very first like Easter eggs. So like mid-credit scenes that happen right after the movie. So he talks to Nick Fury and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to start a program called the Avengers Initiative." And so that kind of starts the whole phase one as a whole, and it now starts to bring in these other characters that Matt will now talk about.
All right. Science guy, all around genius, Dr. Bruce Banner has an incident involving some gamma radiation in a lab and becomes a hulking, angry green giant. A military general, General Ross, has several failed attempts to capture him. A British soldier, under Ross's command, agrees to take a serum, air quotes, serum, engineered to be similar to that of the Hulk, and becomes an abomination.
So in this movie, this is the one movie Matt and I can agree that if you don't watch any movies out of all of the phases, this one's probably going to be in the top 5 of which ones you don't need to watch. And the only reason why is because unless you really want to know the story behind Bruce Banner and the Hulk, it does kind of help. But the problem was is later on in the phase one, um, Edward Norton is actually the Hulk in this movie. So, but Mark Ruffalo becomes the new Hulk and becomes, Bruce Banner, and you'll find out later that he was. It kind of follows that same movie, in one of the other movies. But the thing about this movie is like when Matt was talking about the serum, is we're going to be talking about Captain America here in a little bit. They're trying to recreate the super like soldier serum, and so Emil Blonsky, who is the Abomination, the British soldier, he takes it and it becomes this giant creature. Like I can't even describe it. You kind of have to watch it to understand it.
This was a variation, though, because this one had a little bit of the Hulk's DNA kind of
Right.
interlaced in it.
Right, but the main serum,
Right.
was
It
the
was
super
it was an attempt to recreate it, which I mean, in the comics, there's several attempts.
yeah, and
But-
and I know that that's what they were trying to do with the Hulk originally.
Right.
And so, with Thaddeus Ross, he's another big character later on in the Marvel series, and unfortunately, he passed away. The actor that played him passed away not too long ago, so it's going to be played by Harrison Ford now. We'll get into that much later, but the whole point of Hulk though is, he's this big green monster. The one thing that it kind of defeats the purpose is like there's also another movie, the regular Hulk that came out in 2003 with Eric Bana, and when you watch that one, the Incredible Hulk, and then even the Avengers, all three Hulks are totally different. Like all their powers,
Yeah.
all the abilities that they have, it really defeats the true Hulk of what he should be. Because if you took the Hulk back in 2003, the Incredible Hulk in 2008, and then the Avengers in 2012, if you could combine certain aspects of all of them, that's what the Hulk should be. And again, you'd have to watch them to understand what we're talking about, but it's definitely, unfortunately, a movie that you really don't need to watch as much.
The god of thunder, Thor, is exiled from his golden palace to Earth due to his own arrogance and loses his hammer in the desert. He learns about sacrifice and a life-changing experience before defeating some frost giants. He also finds romance and almost dies at the hands of a robotic destroyer from Asgard sent by his brother Loki.
So good old Thor. I will say this. So he gets exiled in the beginning because his dad saw that he was being, I'm going to put it in very, PG terms, basically a pompous jerk. Just this arrogant guy who thinks he knows everything and was saying that I'm worthy of Mjolnir. Like I'm the guy. Like everyone should. It's almost like he was having this god complex, basically. And Odin's like, "Oh, really? That's how you think? All right. Well, guess what? Now you're exiled, and now you have to prove that you're worthy to Mjolnir again." So he gets blasted down and from Asgard down to the Earth in the middle of a desert, and the Bifrost, which is controlled by Heimdall, he sends him down, and then you know Thor is trying to also remember who he was because he actually gets amnesia, if I'm not mistaken, from that. And so he's trying to figure out who he is and remember the certain events that happened. And the I would say the key event is like, yes, Loki. Um, he definitely had some manipulation in that part because he was like basically saying certain things to basically make sure that he was exiled so that he could become the new king of Asgard because Thor was literally in line. And so because Odin did that, um, you know, again, Thor has to basically prove himself, and he's also having to defend himself against. And you're gonna have to help me out with this one. What's that? The giant like laser. It almost looks like a cyclops, like
The Destroyer.
yes, the destroyer. Sorry. Hey, you know what? I forget sometimes. Okay, so the destroyer, right? So this giant, almost looking like cyclops looking figure, but robotic. He has to destroy with his hammers because he does prove himself to be worthy. And because he does that and he saves the town, then he becomes back to Thor and he gets to go back into Asgard. But there, of course, there's always more events that you could look at. But I would say that's the biggest one because that is the defining moment for Thor to then become, back as the god of thunder.
Right. Short, scrawny 1940s kid Steve Rogers, who wants to serve his country but only gets denied, has a life-changing serum pumped into him and becomes a Hydra bashing superhuman in red, white, and blue uniform. Then gets frozen for about 70 years before thawing out around 2011.
So Matt will kill me if I don't know everything about Cap. So I got this one. Don't worry about this. But Captain America, Steve Rogers,
You got to
right?
keep this short, bud.
I'm going to keep it short. So Captain America, right? He's like he was saying, he was a 19-year-old scrawny kid. They wanted to find somebody that was worthy of this super soldier serum, kind of like when we were talking about the Incredible Hulk, right? And so this one doctor, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head because he unfortunately in the movie dies, but gives him the secret the super soldier serum and basically allows him to become Captain America, this defined, enhanced human being that can basically, run like a cheetah and run or not run, has the like superhuman strength in a sense. But again, he also gets a shield, and that's again, there's different variations of it. But when you look at the movie, the biggest thing that defines him is that, when he's going to, because this is all based in World War II, when he's going overseas, like originally he was just this mascot for the United States, and that's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to serve his country. So basically, he found a way to serve his country and take over the European front. So like he would basically win all the battles. He was the main guy that was doing this, and he also had a team called the Howling Commandos, which Bucky Barnes was his basically best friend, and also in the comics he was the like his sidekick. But the Howling Commandos and him, and with Bucky Barnes, I would say the two most important events is that unfortunately in the movie Bucky Barnes does die. He gets pushed off a train, and we don't see him. And then the biggest thing is that, of course, he meets his nemesis, which is Red Skull. So Red Skull, I'll keep it brief. Again, he's the the main villain, and he also takes the super soldier serum. But unfortunately, it deforms his face, and it becomes the Red Skull. So when he takes off his skin, he just again, it's literally what I said. It's the Red Skull. But he defeats him, and he uses the Tesseract to, at the time, what we thought was he was getting obliterated. But I'm not going to spoil it, but later on you'll find out what actually does happen to him.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get to the later phases. Definitely.
Don't worry, I'm not spoiling anything.
Yeah. All right. So my last summary is together they join forces in New York with some random archery guy called Hawkeye, who at the time no one really cared about, right? Under the command of Nick Fury to take down Thor's naughty half brother Loki and his alien hordes.
So a lot of stuff going on in the Avengers. And this is the first time the Avengers actually get to meet and actually build their team. So you got Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Bruce or Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America. Those are the main Avengers, right? And so what they're doing is they have to save the world from Loki, like he said, who has these alien hordes that is actually, I'm not going to try to spoil it too much, but Thanos, right? Unless you're not going to understand who he is until much later, but he gets control of this army that Thanos has, and he basically tries to take over the earth, but really they're starting in New York City. But this is the first time they actually team up. And honestly, if you watch it, it's one of the best movies out of phase one, in my opinion, because it shows the very first time where you can have a group of superheroes and actually like tell a good story, because you've already told the story from all the other characters building up to this event. Because from 2008 to 2012, it was a 4-year time frame where they had to really build the characters, because if they didn't, it really wouldn't have made sense. And I think a lot of people would have been really confused on what was actually happening if you just randomly brought in characters. But the one thing that Loki does do is he actually controls Hawkeye to do his bidding, basically. And not many people knew what was going on until they didn't know where Hawkeye was. And actually, in Thor, there was a professor who he was the leading like Norse expert, basically, and he takes control of the Tesseract, because the Tesseract, they find out, is actually a portal of some sort, because they don't know exactly where they're going to go. But Loki is asking him to build, this machine that helps the Tesseract to hone in the energy, because what they do is they take this Tesseract and they actually build weapons from it, which later on you'll find out that they have a lot of weapons that were basically destroyed. And then, of course, there's a lot of different weapons that were laid over all around the earth. And basically, some villains actually take advantage of those weapons and use it against, the different Marvel superheroes throughout the universe itself. But the biggest thing with the Marvel Avengers is that, the funny scene, I would say, is when they go out to a restaurant and they're like, "Hey, what do you want to eat?" They're like, "Hey, why don't we get some shawarma?" And they're sitting there and they're like, "What the heck is shawarma?" And they're just sitting there and they're eating it and they're like, "Oh, this is really nice. Like, this is, it was a good time." And it was a good bonding moment. It was like a really quick,
And
like,
the whole scene is quiet.
yeah. And
Nobody's saying a word. They're just eating. I think, and I'd have to rewatch it, but I'm pretty sure Thor was the only one not eating.
Yeah, because I think at one point he did talk about, and I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but he did.
But the whole scene's pretty funny. But I think, phase one in a nutshell, you kind of look at what Marvel is today, and today they're in phase 5.
Right.
Phase 1 through 3,
right,
is really their, Infinity Saga. Because before they were really focused on the phases.
right, the different phases in between, yes.
And now they're kind of, they are still doing phases, but now they're kind of looking more at the saga. So you kind of have, phase 1 through 3 as being, the Infinity Saga. And now we're kind of in this multiverse,
like Kang Dynasty
saga. Yeah.
Saga.
But with phase 1, this was really, I think, like one of the, phase 1, phase 2, really, for me as a Marvel fan, like, I can really appreciate, I think, what Marvel did in these phases. Because when you start looking at phase 3, phase 4, and what they're doing now, it's drastically different. And phase 1, like when they were making Iron Man, they weren't making any other movie. They weren't making a TV show.
No, they were strictly making that movie so they knew it could be successful for what it was
Right.
at that time.
Right now, when they're making Ant-Man, they're making Ant-Man, and then halfway through filming Ant-Man, they're making Guardians. Halfway through filming Guardians, they start filming a TV show. So now like they're splitting their Marvel resources between one movie, two movies, a TV show. Now you have to cut graphics for Ant-Man. Now you have to cut graphics for this, and you have all these different properties and you have to cut all of these, and then people wonder like, well, Ant-Man really wasn't that great, like, you know.
The problem is, man, is like you were saying, is like it's not the same energy, it's not the same tempo that we're used to with like the first three phases, because like Matt was saying, like it was the defining moment for Marvel, because they really took the superhero game to the next level. Because we're not going to be talking about DC, but let's just say that they don't have any idea on how to make what Marvel has done, because Marvel actually took the time to build these characters, build them from the starting point,
Right.
to then have them team up and then face like global threats, and be able to do all this. And I agree that the first like couple phases, like that is like the true, you know, from the comic books to then the movies, like it became like the staple of what, superhero movies should be like, and how they, developed it and how they created it, the character designs, everything. I mean, they did a great job with actually going into details and stories. I mean, granted, some of the movies that we've talked about so far, it's not always direct from the comic book. Some of it might be, and then some of it they might have to change to kind of fit the story a little bit. But for the most part, they're pretty accurate on, how they're trying to develop these characters, then develop the story, and I know that once we talk about certain phases, it's going to get crazy. Like it's going to go from like one point to like, so like three other points in like 2 seconds, because you're not going to know exactly what we're talking about unless you start watching this. So, when you're watching it, it will make sense. But, starting out with phase one and then moving forward, you'll get more of an appreciation for what Marvel was trying to do at the time. Because as Matt was saying, this now phase is totally different from what the same energy it was, because now they're splitting their time, they're creating more things, and sometimes it gets confusing because there's
Right.
no timeline or like story that's being involved. It's all separate stories that, maybe at some point they'll, interact with each other, but not the same like it was before.
Yeah. And they're planning, like when you see cutscenes and when you see certain things like TV shows, they don't necessarily point to the next project. They point to something that might be in phase 6 or phase 7. And you didn't get that in phase 1. In phase 2, like when you saw Iron Man, the cutscene was for Avengers. It was
Right.
for phase 1.
Right. And the one thing that I liked about, first couple phases was that they really started introducing the Easter eggs, right? Because the
Yeah.
main focus at some, like once they developed the Avengers and whatnot, like they actually showed Thanos, which again we'll talk about more about him, but like he is the main villain like throughout the first three phases easily, and it was the focal point, and that's what a lot of these Easter eggs were focusing on at the time because of that one
Right. And they weren't focused on anything outside of, they weren't focused on anything on phase 4 or 5. And that's where after phase 3, you have TV shows and you have things that are focused on things that haven't even had, like the Hawkeye TV show.
Mhm.
Where does Kate Foster fit into anything? We haven't seen anything
Wait, you mean
remotely
Are
close.
you talking about Kate Bishop?
Kate Bishop, whatever.
I'm just
But
saying.
but I'm saying like we haven't seen where she fits into the MCU, even though she was on that show. Where does she fit in?
Well, right, and there's a bunch of. I mean, we'll
There's a
again
lot
talk
of
about,
them
yeah.
too, because and I know that they're planning that Captain America movie with the Falcon who's taken over that mantle, but
Right.
there hasn't even been a mention of him in any MCU movie since that TV show.
Right, and I mean they talk about making a new movie, with um what is it? I know it's called Captain America: New World Order, right? And it's based off of, some of the events, if I'm not mistaken, are some of the same characters from the original Incredible Hulk movie. Like I said, you can watch it; it's up to you, but you can watch it to kind of understand, and then that would make more sense with this movie that they're planning on doing. But you're right; there's a lot of characters that they've mentioned already that they're from my understanding, and like I said, we'll talk more later on about this, but they're creating the new Young Avengers. It's really kind of like what we're getting at with some of the stories that they're building now, because they're basically taking the mantles of the original Avengers, and they're making a cast to specifically design it for that, to defeat a greater threat.
And that's just the problem with, and that's just for me and in my opinion, and take it for what you will. But a lot of these Easter eggs or TV shows, one, not a lot of these Marvel shows I'm actually a fan of. And
I agree.
you can be a fan of them, and that's great, but I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the Marvel shows. But from phase one and phase two, and even some of phase three, you look at the Easter eggs and you look at the extra scenes, that's really where it started. When you go to the movie theaters, you start laughing at the people who are getting up during the credits, and you're like, they're going to be missing the scene. Like,
Yeah. Like, and that's where, yeah,
that's where it started. And you watch the scene. And then when the next movie comes out, you're like, oh my gosh, that's what that Easter egg was in that movie. Now you watch the TV show where you have Kate Bishop, and then you watch Ant-Man, you watch Guardians will be out pretty soon. And I'm sure, we'll see movie after movie after movie. And then a year will pass and we'll go, where's Kate Bishop?
No, you're right. I mean, and when we're talking about these Easter eggs, I mean, it literally was another, like I said, and I've already mentioned this, but the pinnacle moment for how superhero movies should do it, because it gives you that kind of like mysterious insight of what they're actually going to create and how they're actually going to develop the story, so it can make more sense instead of just randomly throwing in a random scene and be like, all right, well, here's another character you have no idea about.
Right.
But that's the thing where, when Matt and I are talking about, like, the first three phases are definitely some of the best, superhero done movies basically of all time. I mean, Matt and I remember actually watching Endgame together, and I'm not going to go into it, but there's a lot of scenes in that one movie alone. That's why I consider it one of my favorites, because it really defines the whole saga as a whole,
Yeah.
because it leads up to that big event. And so, moving forward from this, when we talk about these phases, right, we're going to go in, we're going to talk about certain things like we've mentioned, but we really want you to get encouraged to watch them, because when we talk about it on our daily lives, whether we're talking about like the newer stuff or some of the older stuff, we want you guys to, if you're really curious or interested, when you're watching Marvel, don't just assume, like I said, when you're watching it, make sure you watch those Easter eggs too, because it does make sense. Because once you start to watch them, that's what you're expecting from now on. Because unfortunately, when you're at phase five, there's not many movies or TV shows that have a lot of those Easter eggs. Very few have some kind of leading storyline into something else, and when you're watching it, really focus on how they develop the character, because it really helps to build that story for later movies. And, unfortunately, some of the TV shows, not all, but some TV shows. But, with phase one, I'm going to rate it, honestly, I would say it's probably about an 8 out of 10. I would say it's an 8 out of 10.
I'd probably give it an 8. I'd probably give it an 8. And I know, like, we talk about the end scenes and the those Easter eggs. As far as like the newer ones for me, one of the most confusing, and we'll kind of end with this, I guess, but one of the most confusing ones for me which was most recent, was the newest Spider-Man.
Oh, okay, so No Way Home, yeah.
Yeah, because this one was never quite explained. When you watch No Way Home, the cutscene at the very end credits, you actually have to watch Venom.
Yeah, Let There Be Carnage.
Let There Be Carnage. You have to watch the end scene in that one to understand No Way Home's end scene.
Well, and the funny thing is too, is that, unfortunately I'm gonna mention this too. So some of the characters Marvel doesn't actually own. So for example, Hulk is a big one, because they've been trying for years to get it out of Universal, And Universal's not giving it up. Like they're going to keep Hulk for as long as they want. Every other character, so like Iron Man, Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow, all these ones we've mentioned, right, in Captain America, they're owned by Marvel. So they can do whatever they want. They can change the story. They can do whatever it needs to help develop the storyline as a whole. But with Hulk, unfortunately, you'll find out there really is no justice for him. Like he is only in like the Avengers. He's only in like certain movies as like a supporting character, but he's not like he doesn't have his own movie. So that's why I said if you want to watch it, you know, go ahead. But unfortunately, it's not going to be with Mark Ruffalo, the one that you will see later on. And with these at the time, like certain characters, like we've mentioned, like some of them were allowed to be in the Marvel universe, and some of them, like for example, Spider-Man being owned by Sony, they had to make a deal and they had to build relationships with them to be able to put them in these movies because you know you'll find out that Spider-Man is a very big character that it does help. At least with the MCU, especially later on, it makes more sense once you watch it. But you know, Marvel, unfortunately, even though at the time they didn't have a whole lot of money to, buy these characters and buy all this,
Yeah.
you know, they once they were owned by Disney, then they could get, like, for example, Fox and all these other, supporting, companies that had all these different characters like X-Men, Fantastic Four, some of the other ones that, we'll mention later on. But
Right.
it, unfortunately, it's not like I said, phase one is it's very minimal, but I'll tell you, they did a good job. And yeah, once we go into more,
But like, yeah, that cutscene, if you watch that, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, you watch the cutscene at the end credits before you watch the cutscene in Spider-Man, it makes a lot more sense. But when I went to the theaters and I saw Spider-Man, that cutscene didn't make sense to me. So when I'm watching it, I'm going, what the heck is going on right now?
well, no, I agree, Matt. I mean, that's the problem with how they did it later on is because
Yeah.
they didn't really explain which one you should watch first because they were assuming that maybe because you were part of Marvel that you'd watch.
Yeah, you'd
Venom.
watch Venom first, but I didn't. And I watched Venom after. And
Right.
then when I saw that scene, I was like, oh, now
that
it
makes
makes sense. Yeah.
So you'll find out that certain movies make sense and certain ones you're going to have to kind of go back and forth on depending on if it's Sony or if it's Disney or whatever it is at
Yeah.
the time.
Whatever you do, stay away from Vox's X-Men because you'll be confused thoroughly.
I mean, yeah, we're not going into that, but I agree with Matt. You don't want to if you don't want to lose yourself as a Marvel fan, please do not watch it unless you're really willing to get involved and understand.
Unless you're
the
that much
timelines.
of a Hugh Jackman fan.
Which, I mean, I would say most people, if especially you love Wolverine, you love the X-Men and doing all that,
It's worth it then, yeah.
but if you have no idea and you're like, I don't want to watch it, I'm like, you probably don't because, like Matt was saying, like the timeline is so out there, and you're never gonna know exactly what's going on unless you know comics and everything else too. But all right, I think we're pretty good right now. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for supporting us. Again, our challenge is still, you know, still going to be with you guys. Again, we want you again to reach out to us. Let us know some ideas. Let us know some, maybe some show ideas. Right. So we have our, website. It's going to be www.geeksfromthemultiverse.com. Again, you can go on there. You can check out Spotify. You can check out Apple Podcast. You can check out Amazon Music as well as Google Podcast. Um, we're still developing some stuff that we're working on when it comes to possible, different platforms as well. But, we might mention it later on. Right now, we're just kind of, focusing on those particular four as well as the website. So again, we do appreciate everything you guys are doing. And just know that, we want to hear from you and we want to listen to what, your opinions are. Right. So it's just, we just want you guys to know that you guys are amazing. Okay.
And we do have our Facebook page. We did just start an Instagram as well. We, don't have a lot of posts on Instagram right now. So, if you do have Instagram, jump on over. We are GFTM23, I believe, on Instagram.
That is correct.
So we are trying to get our name out there on more platforms. So if you guys want to, share out, we would greatly appreciate it as much as possible. Like I said, on Spotify or any of the podcast, networks that we're on, like, share, subscribe, and follow, because it is important, that we get the word out as much as possible. We want to, our whole mission with this podcast is to unite all geeks. So we can't do that without you guys' help. So once again, thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Stay geeky.